You're reading Eagle Star. What about this place that you told me about, this farmhouse, or whatever you called it? The Ericanda Salamander. I do not believe you will find him here. I still was want to look. Sebastian thought for a minute, then he nodded it. Looked to me. Where you go, he said. The only important thing is that you do not stay here. I must go with you. I have already explained it to him. He attacked 3 policemen, so now they are looking for him too. They will kill him if they find him. I'm sorry, Matt said. This is my fault. No, it's not. It's his fault. No, it's his fault. If he'd been smarter, he would have stolen your watch and your money without waking you up. I always said he made a lousy thief, but it's too late to worry about that now. He paused. There is something else. Your appearance. We must change that. What do you mean? A white boy with a white boy's clothes. It doesn't matter where you go in Peru. You'll be seen a mile away, Sebastian gestured at the bundle he had brought in. Give him everything you're wearing. What now? Matt was too dazed to argue. He stripped off his jacket, his shirt and his jeans and gave them to Sebastian. He had no doubt that they'd all turn up in some market the next day. But that wasn't enough. Your shoes and socks too, Sebastian ordered. He slipped them off and stood in the room, dressed only in his boxers. Sebastian had produced a bottle and handed it to him. Rub this in, recommend your arms, your legs, and especially your face. Pedro will do your shoulders and back. Shoulder back. What is it? It's a dye made from nuts. It will stain your skin for many weeks. We must also cut your hair. Sebastian took out a pair of scissors. But hesitate, your hair is nice, the man said, and if it will look good at your funeral. But if you want to live, you must look like one of us. We don't have time to argue in a short while. Matt stood wearing his new wardrobe. His hair had been cut in the shape of a pudding bowl. Pudding bowl with a straight eagle above his eyes. His entry body was dark brown. There was no in the room, so he had no idea what he looked like, but he felt disgusting. His new jeans were stained shapeless and come to an abrupt halt high above his ankles, revealing bare legs and feet. I'd been given a green Adidas t-shirt full of holes, filthy and faded, an insert of shoes. He had a pair of sandals made of black rubber, the same as Pedro. They made from tires. Sebastian told him Matt felt his skin trying to shrink away from the clothes. He could imagine that several people had worn them before him, and they had probably never been washed. He noticed with half a smile. So funny, asked. Sebastian translated the question into Spanish, and Pedro answered. He spoke softly and only uttered a few words. He says, "Now you know how a Peruvian boy feels," Sebastian replied, "but you are still too tall. You must learn to walk in a crouch. Make sure you are never high than he is. And now from on you will not be Matt. You will be Matteo. Do you understand?" Matteo. Pedro repeated the word. He seemed amused by Matt's transformation. But Sebastian was completely serious. "You have to be Lima," he said. "If you take my advice, you go south to A- A- Aricayo. I have many friends in the city who will look after you. Perhaps the place won't look for you there. I still want to go to Asia. You are stubborn and you are stupid, but you care about your friend, and that I suppose you credit." Sebastian spat. "Very well, you can stop in Alicia if you think it will do any good. The first bus leaves tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. It's almost certain that the police will be watching the bus station, and and we will have to think about that. I just wanted to find Richard and go home. That's the best thing for all of us. It is a pity that you in the first place." Matt nodded. Suddenly he felt awkward from the moment he had met Sebastian. He had seen a sort of hostility between them without knowing why it was there. "Can I ask something?" he said. "What? You obviously don't like me very much, so why are you helping me?" You're wrong. It's not true that I don't like you very much. I don't like you at all. The police are crawling through the shanty towns thanks to you. They're asking questions, arrests. Everything is going to be difficult until they find you. So why don't you just hand me over? It's obviously what you want to do. It is exactly what I want to do. But it was Pedro who dissuaded me. He tells me that you are somehow important, he says. That we have to help you because you are on our side. How does he know that? He doesn't know anything about me. I know, Sebastian said. It's very strange. Normally he'd have taken your watch and your money, anything else that was of any value, and he would have left you where he found you. He wouldn't have risked getting into trouble with the police, and he wouldn't have brought you here. So why did he? Pedro can't understand it, and nor can I, but he tells me that he's seen you before. Sebastian shook his head. He says that he's been in your dreams, in his dreams. Dream talk. There was on the floor of Sebastian's house. The youngest of them was only 5, the oldest about 7. They had arrived one at a time. The light began to fade. Some carrying tunus boxes, some with buckets and spongers. One with a bag of bright-coloured finger puppets. Sebastian must have already told them about Matt, as none of them seemed so surprised to find him there, and nobody tried to talk to him. They ate dinner, more beans and stew, then spent the rest of the evening playing a game that involved cups and little wooden dice. The room was lit by fat white candles that Matt suspected had been stolen from a church. He watched for an hour, listening to the rattle of the dice in the cups as they were shaken and then tipped onto the floor. Pedro was playing with the others. He glanced at Matt once or twice, and for the first time Matt could see a sort of curiosity in his eyes. "He's seen you before in his dreams," Sebastian's words echoed in his head. Matt examined the previous boy as he continued on his game, furiously rattling and his dice throwing down shielding, his eyes fixed on the other players. Of course, Matt knew who he was. How many times had the two of them sat together in the reed boat? The Wildcat's head for its prow. He was annoyed with himself for not realizing it sooner. He remembered the moment when he'd woke up to find Pedro stealing his watch. He had recognized him there and then, but in all the confusion of what was happening, he had fought back only as far as the traffic lights on the way from the airport. That was when he had seen Pedro for the first time, but of course he had been aware of him for many years before that. Pedro was one of the 5 Matt could imagine Susan afterwards saying the words she would be delighted. Was it perhaps something of a coincidence that Matt had stepped off a plane in a country of 20 million people, and Pedro had been almost the person it was. There were no coincidence, it was meant to happen. That was what the blind medium would have said. So was Richard meant to be kidnapped? Was Matt meant to be at the hotel? Did Matt have any control over what was happening, or was he simply being pushed around by forces that he couldn't see and which way outside his own compensation? And if so, where where were they taking him? What did they have in mind? What the day having there were 1,000 questions Matt wanted to ask, and he didn't have answers to any of them, but he took some comfort in the thought that somehow he and Pedro had found each other. Now there were two of them, and that meant that the other three might not be far behind. Pedro won the game. Matt saw him laugh rightfully and scoop up his dice. He wished his new friend spoke even a smart telling English. How were they supposed to fight together when they couldn't even talk? The game was over. The small children were already asleep, and now the others drew up their blankets and joined them in England. Going to bed had always been a routine for getting changed, brushing teeth, and all the rest of it. Here it was very matter of fact that happened very quickly. The evening stopped. Everyone took their places, huddled together around the single empty bed. Soon the old floor was a sea of blankets that rose and fell while the candles spluttered, throwing strange shadows across the wall. Matt couldn't sleep, trapped in the wrong time zone. The room was too warm, with so many people in it, and there was a mosquito droning around his ear. He hadn't got used to the smell either. He even thought he was now part of it. He hadn't showered for 48 hours, and he could feel the grime clinging to him. He thought about Richard Sebastian had said he was probably dead, but Matt wouldn't even consider the possibility. He wondered how the two of them had allowed themselves to walk into all this, and whatever they would ever see each other again. About an hour later, Sebastian came in. Matt saw to his dismay the man was quite drunk. He staggered over to his bed and collapsed onto it without removing any of his clothes, not even his shoes, within seconds. He was fast asleep and snoring. It took Matt much longer. Our night seemed to slip by before his eyelids firmly closed to his relief, because this time he knew exactly where he wasn't afraid to be there. He was with Pedro on the beach. The reed boat was moored just in front of them, waiting to take them away. Matteo, Pedro said, "I'm glad to see you, Pedro." "Yeah, me too, I suppose." And there was the strange thing, Matt was speaking in English, Pedro was speaking in Spanish, and yet somehow the words were changing in mid-air, so that both boys understand each other perfectly. Did this island only exist in a dream? Matt had always thought so, but now that there were two of them sharing the sand, the sea, the boat, and all the rest of it, he wasn't sure. Part of him was aware that even as he stood there facing Pedro, the two of them were also lying just a meter apart in Prison Town. Perhaps this was why they were able to talk to each other, why there never had before. "I don't get the end of this," Pedro began. "You're one of the five," Matt said. "Yes, I know, one of the five, one of the five. I've been hearing that all my life, but I don't know what it means, do you?" Some of it, there are five of us. I've seen the others over there, Pedro pointed, but there was no sign of the two boys girl on the main land. We're gatekeepers. What gate? It's a long story, Pedro. We've got all night. Matt nodded for the moment. Seemed to be out of any danger in Prison Town. Everything would be quiet on the island. They were alone with no sign of the swan that had twice came swooping out of the darkness, and that was the significance of that. Matt wondered there was still so much he didn't understand. He told Pedro as much as he knew, starting with the death of his parents, his growing awareness that he was never to have a normal life, his life with Gawanda Davis in Ipswich, his involvement with and everything that had happened since then. I came to Peru to find the second gate. Matt concluded that was 2 days ago all through. It feels a lot longer. Everything went wrong the minute we arrived. Find the Nixus. Maybe they can help, or they may be looking for me. I don't know. Matt took a deep breath. The reed boat rocked gently on the water. He wondered if they should get into it, and if they did, where it would take them. I'm reading. Oh, let me read that. Where did it take? Right. I knew you'd come, Joe said. I've always been expecting you, but there's something I want you to know when you were asleep. When I took your watch, you were just some rich tourist kid who'd got lost. I don't know it was you. I'm sorry. Then, then did you realize when you woke up I recognized you then? And the truth is I wasn't too happy to see you. I was you hadn't come. Why? 'Cause you're going to bring trouble with you. Everything's going to change now. Pedro paused. You may not think I have much of life, but it's the only life I've got, and I was sort of happy with it. I'm sure that's not what you want to hear. This isn't what I want. No, I understand. Matt knew exactly what Pedro meant. He felt the same. I didn't know anything about you, he said. Only your name. Do you have another name? What do you do when you are juggling in front of cars or stealing from tourists? And who is Sebastian? Why do you live? I don't like talking about myself, Pedro said. He paused. I will be. 'Cause I suppose you thought it to know, but I'm telling you now, there's not a lot to say. And anyway, you probably won't remember any of it when you woke up. That possibility hadn't occurred to Matt. He sat down on the sand, wondering what time of day it was in his strange dreamland. Was it even day? The sky was dark, but he couldn't see quite clearly. The sand was warm all through. There wasn't any sun. It wasn't day or night, but but something in between. Pedro sat opposite him, with his legs crossed. First of all, Pedro isn't my real name. He began, everyone just calls me that. It's what you called me when I first come to prison. He used to say he named me after his favourite dog. How I had a family before I met him all through. I don't remember very much about them. I did a sister. She was a few years away in the province of Kanta, which you probably never heard of. It's about 6 miles from Lima. A 3-day walk. It was a very boring place. The man went out to work in the fields. They grew potatoes and corn, and the woman stayed at home and looked after the kids. There was no school in the village, but I went to one that was 2 miles away. I didn't learn very much through through I learned some of the letters of the alphabet, but I've never been able to read. He reached out and drew a capital P in the sand with his finger. That's P for Pedro. It's also P for parrot. Papagayo. I remember the letters because it always looked like a parrot to me. My mother used to say that I was born under an evil star, but I don't know what she meant. There were four of us in our family, and we had a nice house, even if it was mainly made of wood and cardboard, and we'd had a big bed, all four of us used to sleep in it. I can't tell you much about my mother. I don't want you to think about her. But sometimes I remember the feel of her next to me in the bed, and that makes me sad. That was always the best part of the day for me, falling asleep. The worst thing about Cantor was the weather. The wind used to come down from the mountains, and it went right through you. I never had enough clothes to wear. Sometimes I only had a t-shirt and my underpants, and I'd think I was going to turn into a block of ice. It used to rain at the start of the year. You never saw rock. It metro. Sometimes it would rain so hard that all I could see was water. I used to wonder how I could live it if I wasn't a fish. It would be raining when I woke up, and it would never stop. You couldn't walk from one end of a village to the other of a great sheet of rain, and if you slipped over in a puddle you might drown. And then there was a day. I must have been about 6 years old. I must have been about 6 years old when it rained so much that the river burst its banks. The river Shivering, that was what it was called. There was too much water and it got out of control, and this great flood come pouring down. It was like a monster, brown and freezing. It swallowed up our house and just threw it away. I remember someone shouted a warning, but I didn't know what they meant. When the world exploded, not with fire but with water and mud, it all happened so quickly. All the houses were smashed up together, people and animals, they were just killed. I should have died, but someone grabbed me and put me high up in the trees, and I was lucky. The tree must have been strong roots. because it wasn't ripped out like the others. I stayed in the branches of that tree all day and all night, and when the morning came, my village wasn't there anymore. It was just sort of swamp with dead people floating on the surface. I guess my parents and my sister were almost there. Those were killed. I never saw them again, and nobody told me, so they must have all drowned. Pedro stopped. Matt was amazed that he could tell all this in such a matter of fact. Why he tried to imagine the horror of what it must have been like. A whole community had been destroyed. He realized that this sort of thing must happen often in some sorts of the world, but that it wouldn't have been given more than half an inch in a British newspaper. I think after things become very difficult, Pedro went on. I think I wanted to die inside. I thought it was wrong that my parents were dead and I still alive, but the strange thing is I know I was going to be alright. I had nowhere to live. There was food. People were falling sick all around me, but I know that whatever happened, I would make it. It was like my life was being all over again. Anyway, some of the survivors come together. There were quite a lot of them, and they decided to go to Lima. There was where they thought I'd be able to build themselves a new life. I went with them. I was the youngest, and they didn't want to take me. But in the end, I followed, and there was nothing they could do. Subscribe to the bell, share, click on my screen. No, subscribe to the bell, share, click on my screen. Videos from